Oh, banger.
Welcome back to another episode with Fight Night Picks. As always, we're brought to you by SimBody. Vertiball is now SimBody. If you head on over to their website, simbody.com, you're going to get all the great products that you know and love, including the SimBody Vertiroller and the Vertiball that you have seen most likely here in studio. Look at that. Place it, lock it, attach it, Vertiball, all sorts of great stuff over there if you want to roll out those old tired muscles and you don't want to go with that old lacrosse ball. They're also coming out with that very new product that you can see right in front of you. And if I head on over to my cart, look at that. I've already got a Vertiball over there. Little bit of a deal right there. And if you hit the try for 60 days risk-free, use the promo code FNP, you're going to get 20% off your order with that code FNP at simbody.com. You're really, really helping out another local company here in New Brunswick, Canada. Can't wait for it. The new name, SimBody at simbody.com. And as we always say, let's get into it.
A last look at the big card. Be sure to head into the chat and have your say. Let's get into it and join in Fight Night Picks Kicks.
We're live, we're in person, and we're set for UFC 272. As always, one half your host to do it, Craig Allen. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Craig Allen FNP. With me to my left, to your right, as always, the other half. It's Matt Allen FNP, having a heck of a year. And I know that we're both fired up for UFC 272 coming up today. That chat is lit. It's on fire. Brandon Gerhart, Wayne Kerr II, Prince Vegeta's son, and Kyle O.M. hitting up the super chat earlier on.
Appreciate it.
Is much appreciated, Kyle, as we were getting ready, putting the show notes back together to get ready for the weekend that is. We certainly appreciate that. We've got American, Aaron, Adam, who else? Laos Nan, who's here every single week. I know everybody's looking forward to this card, Matt. And listen, it's trending in a pretty good direction. It looks like a lot of people are tuning in for this one coming up today.
And that's the thing. We have this non-title fight main event, and I know we both kind of rolled our eyes. Let's be honest. It's Covington, it's Masvidal. They're, 1-4 in their last 5, even though they've only lost to Kamaru Usman out of those 4 losses. But still, is this really a pay-per-view worthy main event? I woke up this morning, though, and I had that pay-per-view type of excitement. I'm fired up for this whole entire card. I think it's going to be phenomenal, and I am excited for this main event. I'd be lying if I told you otherwise. I do think Covington and Masvidal are, going to put on a really good show. I know the press conference wasn't great. It was weird.
Oh, it was awful.
There was a lot of noise. I mean, we can say that. That's for certain. But it has seeped into sort of the mainstream sports media, you know? It's been on First Take. It's been on ESPN. It has got a lot more of sort of the casual audience on board, which is always great to really boost the profile of these other fighters. So I think it's going to be a great card, and I can't wait to break it down a little bit more.
And I mean, Joe's saying over there, it is a great card. It definitely is. Ali saying, smash that like. Adam saying, let's go. And listen, American saying double knockout would be so fitting. That'd be crazy. And I even went back, I saw it on Reddit, a post, an AMA from 7 years ago, back when Colby Covington only had one fight in the UFC, and down in the comments section, he was saying, yeah, I was on a TV show with my best friend, that's Jorge Masvidal, back when I was broke, this guy was here for me, wow. And now we're here, and we didn't focus a lot on that bad blood, and obviously with that press conference, it was so weird. How
does a bill become a law, Craig?
I don't know.
Neither do I.
And neither do they. But really, when it comes down to this card, and when it comes down to question mark kicks, Brandon G just wants to see the world burn. He really wants to see the hot sauce. Maybe it'll happen. Maybe it'll happen in the Fight Night Pick sidekick. Yeah, new name. If you want to hang out, you want to watch the main card, you can do that at your own discretion, but you can follow along with us here on the channel. It should be a lot of fun. Todd's here, Alex Clark, Walker Scott, and Lord Nikon. The FNP comment about Masvidal being an underrated cerebral fighter was fantastic. Lord Nikon, yeah, we gave a lot of props to Jorge Masvidal in that video. It should be a great fight, but if you know Fight Night Picks, you know question mark kicks, you know that this ball is going to keep rolling as this show goes on. So toss a like, tell a friend, and we'll get moving on. We'll throw it on over to our fight in the night screen. And it underwent a little bit of a different look as the week went on. So we have Kevin Holland taking on Alex Oliveira. A lot of people on Kevin Holland. I'll talk about the votes that we have in our Instagram story. That's at Fight Night Picks on Instagram, where we toss those up every Saturday. And then we update the results as the fights go on. But by and large, Kevin Holland, he looked great on the scale at
He did.
170 pounds, a lot bigger than Alex Oliveira. Former lightweight versus a former middleweight. But I really do like this fight. I think it's going to be a lot of fun while it lasts.
I don't often do this, but I kind of told you so. Like, I was pretty confident about Kevin Holland being able to make 170 pounds, and I truly do believe that we are going to see the best version of him in the UFC at 170 and not at 185. And he was a pretty darn good fighter at middleweight, so I really do have high hopes for him at this weight class, but I do agree with you. Seeing him look so good on the scales yesterday does reinforce me with a lot more confidence going into today, but that's the great thing about Alex Oliveira. We've seen him in Fight of the Years. We've seen him come back in hard fights. We've seen him wilt under pressure too, which is very odd. He always throws out a different look to his opponent, but an Alex Oliveira fight is always a fun one.
Well, Lorthos, the legend, saying Moicano is the man, and unfortunately for Renato Moicano, it was Fiziev, it was RDA. We switched it up, but I mean, Devonte Smith taking on my guy from Slovakia, Ludwig Klein. I mean, listen, for Slovakia, a country mainly known to me for the hockey players that we've had so far, but for Ludwig Klein, a great debut on short notice. Shane Young goes out there, has the Ludwig Klein fights that we know and love that we saw on the regional scene. But since then, he's really stalled out. He implemented a little bit more wrestling in his last two fights against Trezano, against Nate Landwehr, to ill effect. So he's back at home, training in his own gym, getting ready for this one, no longer at Sanford MMA. Taking on Devonte Smith, a guy who's been at Factory X, or at least taking his camps from Cleveland over to Factory X to kind of polish things up for some time now. I do think this is going to be a fun fight. It's one that I always talk about it, and then I feel kind of like a dingus saying it, but, oh, this fight's flying under the radar. But most of the people here with Fight Night Picks know about it. I feel like this is one that's probably not getting enough shine, but I am really looking forward to this fight.
You went a little rogue on this one, but I do think it is going to be a fun fight because Ludwig Klein and Devonte Smith both need wins today. We both know that because they did have a lot of hype coming into the UFC. They were more than just your average unranked contender, but like you said, both guys' career has kind of stalled out right now. I do feel like Smith has the slightly higher ceiling, and I know we'll get to the final prediction here in a bit, but I do think it'll be a very fun fight no matter where it does end up, be it on the ground or on the feet.
And Star Smith 77 Porter, that is a long handle saying, I like the way Klein fights. I do too. I don't know if he's going to be able to get the win today, but we will go bottom all the way back up to the top. We will flip it on over in the order so you get a second time look, but just like a baseball game and pitchers nowadays, we don't give the third look because that's when the percentages go down. But I think this is going to be a lot of fun, and it is an interesting card. And listen, straight up, first fight on the card at light heavyweight. I know this is one that we're both looking forward to. Dustin Jacoby taking on Hussar. Michał Oleksiejczuk, you know, Hussar, that heavy cavalry out of Poland.
They got the wings.
You know, they got the wings, they got some swords, they have horses. It's a lot of fun. And for Hussar, his last time out against Shamil Gamzatov, it was one of those fights where give an inch, take a mile. He didn't really give Gamzatov anything at all, backed him up. His finishing combination was amazing. And when you look at that fight, it's kind of been a bit of a microcosm to Oleksiejczuk's career. And I know we talked about it kind of in the build-up to this fight, the fact that Lord Michael, when he's winning, he's using his pressure. He fights behind a jab. He throws a nice uppercut. But he really does do a very good job of initiating lead foot position and really pushing the dance. And I don't know if the Hussars, did they have enough energy once they hop off a horse to then dance?
If you think I'm a historian on ancient Polish military, you're out of your mind.
But when it comes to this one, it really is tricky because Dustin Jacoby, he does move very well. I mean, he has that Glory Kickboxing lineage. He has those 2 losses to Simon Marcus, which, hey,
he's really good.
He is, and it happens. But if you look at it, he hasn't lost an MMA fight since 2015. So kind of crazy to go that way. Obviously, a long layoff between fights. But you look at his last 2 losses. King Mo Lawal over with Bellator, you know, pretty good. I mean, he's a coach now at ATT. And John Salter, your former title challenger over with Bellator, who had not a great time out against Mousasi, but neither did Vanderford. But when it comes to this fight, Matt, again, both of these guys, primary strikers. I think this is going to be a fun one while it lasts.
It should be a really fun fight because Jacoby has proven that he can hang with a lot of really good fighters at this weight class, but both of these guys do really need a statement win. And for Lord Michael, he's had a lot more opportunities for those statement wins throughout his career. People will point to the big chance he had against OSP where he got Von Flute, but hey, that seems to happen to a lot of unranked fighters who try to fight OSP. It's just been a really weird road for Oleksiejczuk because it felt like he had a higher ceiling coming into the UFC, or at least on his way up the rankings. rankings, but he has sort of stalled out as of late, and it will be interesting to see if he can get past this test in Jacoby, because the rankings only go to 15, but these guys are number 16 and 17 in the division. Like, I do think whoever gets this win will find themselves in either that 14 or 15 slot in the rankings, because that part of the rankings is always kind of fluid, you know? You don't really need a win to get there. It's just whoever was most recently active can probably jump into the rankings, and if they're exciting, the UFC keeps them there. That's why I am kind of switching my pick in this one. I don't often do it.
Whoa.
But
I am kind of?
No, I am going to switch my pick in this fight, because this is my problem going back and watching a few more Dustin Jacoby fights. I really worry about him accepting forward pressure. He is somebody who can get backed up sometimes, and if this fight does go sort of along the script of a Lord Michael fight, it's going to be him walking forward, going to the body with hooks, finishing up top like you had mentioned, and I do think that if he can get Jacoby or back up against those behind those two black lines, and up against the cage, I think he'll be able to land one of those big combinations and hurt him. We've seen Jacoby get hurt in his MMA career before. We haven't seen him get knocked out, but I do think that the power of Oleksiejczuk will be enough to hurt him and maybe even put him away.
If I was to like Michael Oleksiejczuk, and obviously if you go in there, you saw the last fight Jacoby was able to have when he was taking on, and again, not necessarily the best level competition, but a guy that's been around when he took on, and I guess what, we're talking a while ago now, 11 months ago. It's crazy how much Dustin Jacoby does fight, but his fight against Maxim Grishin, he gets dropped twice at the start of that fight. When he takes on Iwan Kutsalaba, it's a 10-8 first round. He's just taken down. Darren Stewart, he ends up getting the knockout. John Allen, he was all over that fight.
And Darren Stewart looks so small against Jacoby.
Yeah, and Darren Stewart, I'm eager to see more of his fights back in the regional scene, back with Cage Warriors, if you want to call that regional. But when you do look at this fight, Dustin Jacoby can give up first rounds. It doesn't matter if it's wrestling, if it's striking, whatever it is. It's almost like it takes him a little bit of time to get into it, which is maybe a little strange for a guy that has that kickboxing lineage and a 5-minute atmosphere where it's taken him that long to get into it. But we see him from Jacoby. He usually tends to excel as the fight goes on. He gets into it. But again, we know Lord Michael, he is a first-round finisher. And for Jacoby, I say all of this, traditionally, career-wise, he is a first-round guy himself. So it's been more of a recent trend as he's matured in that octagon. Stephen Baldwin hitting us up in the super chat. Let's get into it today, boys. Is he a member of the famous Baldwin family? Do we know?
I do not.
All right, Matt. Is there any relation to Justin Bieber? Canadian. If we look at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram, 75% of the fans going with Dustin Jacoby, 25% of the fans going with Lord Michael Oleksiejczuk. It's Hussar now. And if you look at it for Oleksiejczuk, he's coming in open to plus 140, plus 160 right now. For Jacoby, open to minus 160, minus 191. I still have Dustin Jacoby.
I don't hate the odds, though, for where Oleksiejczuk is. Like, coming into this picking Jacoby at the start of the week, I was like, okay, it's a very 50-50 fight. And I have switched my pick. Again, I think we both agree this is a very volatile fight. Both guys have a lot of knockout power. Both guys are very skilled on the feet. But I do like Oleksiejczuk. And for an underdog, I don't think it's a terrible pick.
And over in the comments section, Kyle O.M. Jacoby, but not too confident in him. Serial chiller. Change your pick back, Matt. Lord Michael lost to Modestas Bukauskas. He definitely did.
You gotta stop with that,
did.
Craig. And Craig will never let anyone forget.
We will move on to our next fight, and we have Devonte Smith taking on Ludwig Klein. And this is one that I just kind of did the subtle, not so subtle switch of the fight of the night screen. But there's so many good fights on this card. And when it comes to Devonte Smith and the man himself, Ludwig Klein, Klein looked like a beast on Instagram 9 days before he accepted this fight to actually take place.
We'll switch my pick now.
Well, that's the craziest part about it. You look at it, for Klein, he is a featherweight. He definitely did look good in training camp. He accepts this one on incredibly short notice last Thursday. Not like 2 days ago, but the Thursday before. And if you look at it, he's replacing Eric Gonzalez. And when I look at Eric Gonzalez, he was going to lose to Devonte Smith. He was going to get out-wrestled. He was going to get out-struck. He was going to lose that fight. And it's easy for me to, say that now. But really, Devonte Smith might be short in stature for this division. He packs a punch. He's got that good whip at the end of his shots with a lot of power. And he's got that secret X factor that not a lot of people focus on in his wrestling. So I really do like that out of Devonte Smith in this one. The Man Cave saying Slovakia stand up. Lausdan saying kicks. When we look at this fight, Matt, though, it is a lot of fun. I do like this one. It is a little tricky, though. It is.
I don't find it all that tricky, to be honest. I really do think Devonte Smith just stylistically poses a lot of problems to Ludwig Klein, because with Klein, he does rely on a lot of big actions to have a lot of his own success, and I don't think he's going to be able to do that against someone like Devonte Smith, who can work behind his jab. And at the kicking range, where I do think Klein is going to need to keep this fight if he's going to have a lot of success, he's going to be eating a lot of leg kicks at that range. So I do think it's going to really hurt him with his own footwork, with his own movement, and if he doesn't have great footwork and great movement by the second, third round, I do think that jab really is going to start to pick away at Ludwig Klein throughout this fight. I just worry about what he can do to be steady throughout this matchup, because I do think Devonte Smith, I know we look at his knockout power, and he does have really good knockout power, but I just look at him as being the one who's the more consistent guy throughout the 3 rounds, whereas Klein might have a big opportunity in one round or a big opportunity in another round. I just don't think he's going to be able to he won't be able to go out there and win round after round after round unless he does get a big knockout. So I do like Devonte Smith quite a bit in this matchup. Now, here's the thing, and this is where I think it's interesting. Where do you put Devonte Smith's ceiling? Like, do you think it has faltered? Because at one point, I thought he was a shoo-in to get into the top 15 of lightweight, if I'm being completely honest. Like, that's how high I thought of Devonte Smith. At this point, I've definitely fallen off of that hype train, but do you think he can kind of get his name back into that category of, hey, you get 3-4 fights in a row, you might be a ranked fighter? Or do you think he's closer to an Alexander Hernandez, I guess?
I mean, you think about it, and Hernandez kind of falls into that trope. Not the fact that they just train together, but they also tend to get cracked, to get hurt. Smith's 3 losses, all of them by knockout. And if you look at it at lightweight, even at the bottom, CDF, Brad Riddell, Arman Tsarukyan, Mateusz Gamrot, Fiziev.
It's a deep weight class.
Like, I think a CDF fight, maybe that'd be fun, but it definitely doesn't favor Devonte Smith. So when I do look at this fight, though, again, Klein taking it on short notice, moving up a weight class, short notice, definitely worked for him. Again, that Shane Young fight was great. Down at 145, at 155, I just don't necessarily see it. I really do like Ludwig Klein. Like, if you go back and watch our original prediction videos for this guy in the 3 fights that he's had in the UFC, I was all over him, but at this point, short notice, up a weight class, I do not have him, and if I look at Fight Night Picks for the votes on this one, 66% going with Smith, 34% taking Klein. If you take Klein, I won't rag on you, I won't give you a hard time, but yeah, for me, it's got to be Devonte Smith. Like you said, boxing combinations, the side-to-side movement, the fact that he utilizes that leg kick very well. Eager to see how it shakes out against the southpaw, but I think it's going to be a great fight nonetheless.
It should be a really fun one.
All right, so both of us with Smith in this one. We move on to our next fight. Tim Elliott taking on Tagir Ulanbekov. Let us know in that comment section, were we too hard on Tagir Ulanbekov? Because am I impressed?
If anything, I think we should have been a little bit more realistic about where Tim Elliott is in his career. Because here's the thing. I believe we both picked Ulanbekov.
Oh, yeah, we did, for sure.
But the problem is, Tim Elliott to me feels like Isaiah Thomas on a 10-day contract all the time. It's like, okay, we're waiting for your one big slip up, and then we'll kind of write you off. And for Elliott, it hasn't gotten to that point just yet. He has been able to stay somewhat competitive with these up-and-coming contenders. And listen, sometimes you're fighting a Askarov and things aren't going to look great, but if you're a guy like Tim Elliott, you're always going to have really good cardio, and your grappling can at least keep you competitive in some matchups, and that's why if he does lose this fight, I don't think he's going to look awful in it. I don't think this is going to be like a Joseph Benavidez fighting a Davison Figueiredo, where by the end of it, we're like, oh my goodness, like maybe it is time to call it a career. With Elliott, his strengths are somewhat what Ulanbekov's strengths are, so I do think it'll at least keep this fight somewhat 50-50, but at a certain point, a 35-year-old's cardio is going to start to fall off at this weight class, I do believe, and with Ulanbekov, I agree with everything you said, especially throughout our prediction video about how, listen, let's pump the brakes on this guy's hype a little bit, and even if he does beat Tim Elliott, maybe we don't completely reassess where we think Ulanbekov's future's going, but I do think it's going to be enough to beat Tim Elliott, and the big key to this is, I think he's going to end up on top in a lot of the scrambles, and we're definitely going to see scrambles in this fight. It's a Tim Elliott fight, and I think because of Ulanbekov's ability to end up in that top position, it's really going to help him win this fight.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at this one, Clay saying, I hope Elliott doesn't fall asleep in top position like he did in round 2 versus Royval. There's some fights where he does get that, and then it's just periods of inactivity, and he gets a little too involved with it. But when I look at Tagir Ulanbekov, we talked about this. He does not check leg kicks, and he's a bad striker. Like, he does not fit in. You look at Askarov, a guy who utilizes his takedowns, and then his grappling is so good at the top of this division. His striking's the weakest part of his game, and even then, he was rocking Joseph Benavidez in their fight. Like, he can still get it done. Tagir Ulanbekov, again, at 30 years of age, he's got a long ways to progress in his striking. I just don't think we're going to see it. Now, he is of that ilk that if he gets a takedown, if he gets top position, he is very good. The Man Cave's saying Tagir's ready because he trains with Islam, Habib, Usman, and Umar. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that way, but Canadians for the Cup saying Tagir is overrated, let's be real. We're not rating him that way.
No, we're not.
We aren't.
I think
So
we're being
if
realistic.
others are, then that is what it is. But again, I look at this one, and you talk about the leg kicks of Tim Elliott. 24.4% of his overall strikes since he's come back to the UFC off the Ultimate Fighter season 24 are leg kicks. He's going to do it all day. So if you really like Tagir Ulanbekov where he's at, I'm going to have a look at the odds because some of these have changed a lot over this week. Like, I'm talking a lot. Ulanbekov open to minus 275. He's a minus 233. Timothy Elliott, as they have him on best fight odds, at a plus 190. I don't necessarily hate Tim Elliott at that spot. Maybe I'd pepper him in if I liked him. If you look at Fight Night Picks for the vote, 76% going with Ulanbekov. I like him. Serial Chiller saying Elliott is overrated too. I don't know who's overrating Tim Elliott. Who are these people?
Well, okay, I'm not gonna to call you out a little bit where you were like, oh, people who are disrespecting Gegard Mousasi. No one disrespects Gegard either. Like I think,
Yeah.
but that's what I mean. It's just like I don't think there's a lot of people out there disrespecting Tim Elliott either. It's just he was a good fighter. He can stay competitive with some guys. And again, his strengths are Tagir's strengths, and that's why this fight might be competitive. It's just you're looking at a younger version of Tim Elliott fighting himself, I think.
All right, so we're both going with Tagir Ulanbekov. Yeah, sure. Brian Kelleher is taking on Umar Nurmagomedov, and when you look at this fight, the only question mark that I have is how healed is Umar's knee from last year. I mean, it was last spring. He tore his ACL. He's been out for that long. He's had fights booked that have fallen out. He's had so many fights booked that have fallen out. He had a multitude of them before the fight against Sergey Morozov. But then when I look at this fight, Matt, I mean, for Umar Nurmagomedov, his striking... Is that even the best part of his game? That's the craziest part about it because his striking is incredibly elite. He does like to get a little flashy with some of his kicks. I mean, it's flash and flare, long hair swinging, middle finger in the air. You know who sung that one. Ugh. But when you look at Nurmagomedov, he loves the question mark kick. He loves this show. And it really is kind of a staple of his game to prod that one out there to try and frig up his opponents if we're keeping it PG for the show. With Brian Kelleher, good movement side to side, good takedowns of his own. He has great defensive submissions, and he hits really hard with the hooks that he will throw. This one, to me, doesn't necessarily feel like a Kelleher win. A guy who I'm always there for his fights, but I like Nurmagomedov in just about every spot here.
Because the thing about Kelleher is that he's so well-rounded, he's always going to struggle against guys who are specialists. And it's not that Nurmagomedov is a specialist, it's just that he specializes in a few things in his MMA game. If he can keep this at kicking range, well, Brian Kelleher doesn't throw a lot of kicks. He has good but not great footwork, to where he's not really dynamic with it. He really just sort of plods forward, so it's going to be really hard for him to cut off the cage. And his ground game is heavily reliant on his ability to use defensive submissions, which are really good, but that's normally using your opponent's weakness against them. It's relying on them to make some big miscalculation, and then you submitting them. I don't think Nurmagomedov's going to make a mistake that grave in this matchup, and that's why I do like him. But for Kelleher, it feels like every time he is such a big underdog, he does have a chance to win. Because like you said, he does have knockout power, even though he doesn't look like the most imposing guy in any weight class he fights in. He does have good submission ability. Like, he is just good across the board, and that's why this is a dangerous fight. But I do like Umar quite a bit.
Bible saying this looks like a nice little parlay ruiner of a fight. I personally don't like to go with favorites that are this big, and for Nurmagomedov, when we did the original video at the start of the week, he was a minus 700. Wow. Now he's a minus 963. Brian Kelleher plus 614. So for me, it's way too far. But when I look at this fight, yeah, I mean, just about all areas of the game, I would have Nurmagomedov. Kelleher is one of those guys, like we saw it again, D. Silva against Morozov. He was able to land some of that power
100%.
When things were getting in tight. So if
Good
you
call.
like Kelleher, maybe you like that in this fight. But,
Question.
yeah.
Do you think this will be the fight that gets Nurmagomedov a ranked opponent next? Because I do feel like Kelleher's close enough to the top 15 to where if you do beat him in impressive fashion, they could make the jump to get him into there. Do you think he needs a few more?
Back down to 135, a win, then maybe we get a ranked opponent. If we have a look at bantamweight, just to get a bit of an idea of what we're kind of going for, Sansa was somehow ranked 15th, and then you have Song Yadong, who fights next weekend in the co-main event, Ricky Simone, Sean O'Malley, and so on and so forth. So Matt, we'll go over to our next one. We have Maryna Moroz taking on Mariya Agapova, and we got a little bit of the commentary that we didn't focus on their beef outside of the cage in the media, so on and so forth. It's bad blood, just like the main event, and it really is. And for Maryna Moroz, obviously, you're fighting with a pretty darn heavy heart coming into this one, taking on Agapova with everything that's going on in her home country. And this fight is a really interesting one because if you look at it for Agapova, you saw in her last fight against Sabina Mazo, she really brought everything together off of the loss against Dobson. Now we come in against Mazo. Is she going to be able to figure out the range? Can she maybe get it down to the ground? Knocked her down in the third round, submitted her. So it's one of those ones where it alleviates some of the question marks about the cardio, especially that she showed in that Dobson fight. You go so hard in the first round, they have nothing left in the second round. Taking on a Maryna Moroz, you have to try and reserve some of that cardio because Moroz is a cardio queen. And you saw it early on in her career as a boxing champion, as a national women's boxing coach that she is. She was getting first round arm bars really early on, and then it's been more decisions. So it's going to be an interesting one here. I look at this one, Matt. For me, I have Mariya Agapova. I think there's more ways to win. If Moroz is going to win, certainly she can definitely get it done by decision.
This fight's just going to be a loss in my prediction column no matter who I predict. Because if I pick Agapova, she's going to go out there, probably get jabbed 480 times. And that's an exaggeration because only 3 of them are going to land and the rest of them are going to be like that far away from her face because that's how Moroz fights. And that's the frustrating thing. Offensively, she does throw a lot of volume, and there's a lot of variety to her shots, but her range management is not good whatsoever. She's like the reverse of Wonder Boy. Sometimes Wonder Boy will only throw like 3 punches in a round, but he makes sure that those 3 punches really do matter because he's setting them up. With Moroz, it's just a lot that you have to deal with, and if Agapova is just comfortable with getting hit, and I know that's a weird thing to say because, listen, you're in MMA, everybody sort of has to be comfortable with getting hit, everybody has to be tough, but you get what I mean, like, it's not that easy to tell your fighter, hey, sit in the pocket, eat 15 shots, you can land your own few, or you can get the takedown, and then you can have success. Like, there's a certain mentality a fighter has to really be able to be dedicated to a game plan like that, and that's why I do have Moroz in this matchup, because I gotta be honest, just for complete transparency, I don't think all that highly of Agapova's skill set. Like, I don't think we are going to see her in the top 15 at any point throughout her career. I just think there are a lot of weaknesses to her. Now, I agree with what you said. I do think she has more ways to win, but she has more ways to lose, if that makes any sense. She leaves herself very wide open. She does have extreme cardio problems throughout her career. And yes, she was able to at least not show those in the last one, but those questions still remain, and for those reasons, I have to pick Moroz.
Matt, Blues fan 1700 wants to hear your top 3 most confident picks. That's really putting you on the spot. Do you want to wait till later?
Do you want to just go to the Tapology thing quick and give me a whole view of the card and I can bang them out?
Bang them out?
Wow, maybe not the best terminology. Ulanbekov is probably going to win. Who else? Let's see. Marina Rodriguez, she's very good, and Kevin Holland, he's also quite good at this weight class, I would imagine. There's 3.
All right, there you go. When I look at it for Maryna Moroz, again, 31% striking accuracy, because it's just a lot. It is a lot. She throws a lot. She doesn't land a lot. It depends on what the judges see.
It really does.
They can be wrong. They can be wrong a lot. But for me, Moroz gets to stay at ATT proper. Agapova, ATT Sunrise after, hanging around with Jillian Robertson a little bit. But for me, again, I like Agapova in this matchup. I want to have a look at the odds before we move on too far. Agapova open a -200, -179. For Maryna Moroz, open a +170. She's +150. If we go over to Fight Night Picks on the IGs, 72% going with Agapova in this one. So yeah,
I'm surprised they're so heavily swayed towards it.
I do have Agapova. For Moroz, again, periods of inactivity, making fighters fight to her game plan. That's usually how she wins. Like, if you look at it, her last fight, Maeda Buena Silva didn't throw a damn kick, and she just tried to headhunt and throw power punches, whiffed on her own. If you look at it, a win over Sabina Mazo, who fight, it's just tough sometimes.
But it was just that volume-heavy attack.
It really was. So we'll move on to our next fight. We're split on this one. We have Nicolae Negumereanu taking on Kennedy and Nzechukwu. Negumereanu and Nzechukwu. I know Joe Rogan kind of slipped on it there when he was doing the intro yesterday. Joe Rogan back on the call coming up tonight. I'd be really interested to see him in Bisping on a card. But when it comes to Negumereanu and Kennedy and Nzechukwu, this is another one of those ones. I mean, not necessarily like Agapova, more ways to win, but if I look at it for Nicolae Negumereanu, much more offensive fighter. Like, this
yeah.
guy's going to go out there. He's going to try and take you down. He's going to try and ground and pound you. He's going to try and ankle pick you for a guy at 205 pounds. Like, he does wild stuff. And I'm talking more about what we've seen out of Negumereanu on the regional scene before he came into the UFC. So far in the UFC, it's been a mixed bag. Obviously, you lose to Saperbeg Safarov, where they must have had a gentleman's agreement in the back. Like, hey, who can grab the cage more? What will Herb Dean do? But ultimately, Saperbeg came out on the winning end. Then he gets to win over Alexa Kammer. Then he gets to win over Ike Villanueva, where if Hurricane Ike can do anything well, it's march forward, give damage, not necessarily receive damage. So in that fight, Negumereanu able to finish him. It was a lot of fun. Clay is saying over there, this is somewhere between a dumpster fire and a train wreck. I'm not even curious, but I know I'll end up being oddly entertained. And yeah, MPTV wants to hear an intelligent DeMarcus Cousins reference. Is he a good, like, 8th option off the bench?
He's a terrible star to have on your team because his usage rate is through the roof and you have to put the ball through him. We don't need to get into a whole Boogie Cousins thing, but he's one of the most overrated players ever. Anyways, I'll put one into a fight later on. Don't you worry, MPTV. This thing about this fight, if it ends in the first half, Nicolae probably won. If it ends in the second half, Kennedy probably won. Because if Nicolae can really implement his wrestling early on, I do think Nzechukwu will have a tough time getting back up to his feet. But it is going to be tough to get him down. We mentioned this in the original prediction video. Very big for this weight class and really good at digging underhooks too. But I do think this is a case of if you can get past that initial defensive sort of barrier, it will become a lot easier for him if he can get it to the mat. Now, again, if your best path to victory against Kennedy is take him down, it's going to be very, very difficult because he does have great cardio. He does have really good striking defense, and he has really good wrestling defense too. He's shown that throughout his career. But I do think he's going to struggle just being consistent throughout this matchup. Now, it will be interesting because I do think Kennedy has the slightly higher ceiling between these two, if I'm being fair. I do think his combination of just size, cardio, and again, just overall output could carry him a little bit higher up this division, but I know we go back and forth on this a lot. What's the weaker division in the UFC, middleweight or light heavyweight? It's one of the two, though. I think we can agree on that much, but I do like Nicolae in this matchup.
Yeah, I look at this one. Kennedy, I mean, let's talk about the odds. Let's just see where they're at, because it feels like one of those ones that you just... You scream, pop, and popcorn, and you move on. Kenny Nzechukwu opened to minus 125, went down as far as minus 155. He's minus 135 right now. Negumereanu, again, plus 105 all the way up to plus 130, which is when we taped our video. He was right around there. And now he's a plus 111. So the odds closing in on par. I had the underdog at the start of the week. I still have the underdog right now in Negumereanu. If you look at it for Kenny Nzechukwu, I saw the comment up there earlier, Serial Chiller saying Saif Saud's in his corner. He's going to have a good game plan for him. And I agree. I like Saif Saud. I know he gets like balls to the wall excited for his fighters and really tries to coach them into things. And you have to at certain points. Like I look at what we saw Tiki Gosen do for Tresean Gore over on The Ultimate Fighter the last season where he just yelled him into finishes. To where Saif Saud's like, Kennedy, you got to go forward. You got to bring that hand up. You got to actually go out there and have the killer instinct. But the trouble with that is sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. Like, listen, I get it. His last fight out there, like that is a tough one if you're looking at for Kenny Nzechukwu because he didn't really do much of anything against Dao Unjung. And then you have that finishing sequence. It was talked about in the comment section again about those elbows. But for Kennedy, he's got to get it moving. For a guy like Negumereanu, maybe he implements his wrestling early, maybe he doesn't. I'm eager to see it. But for me, I do like Nicolae Negumereanu as an underdog in this one. But again, I'm going to sit back. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to drink my jug of water and eat some popcorn. Yeah?
There you go.
All right. Jugs of water, popcorn. Lots of fun, Matt. We move into our next fight. Maryna Rodriguez taking on Yan Xiaonan. First leg of the question mark kicks parlay. Fight starts round number 2, minus 700. Maryna Rodriguez taking on Yan Xiaonan. It's an interesting fight because for Rodriguez, she's coming off of 2 main events. Unfortunately, her second to last main event that she had up at flyweight, that competitor looking like maybe a career-ending injury for Michelle Waterson. So hopefully it's not so, but Michelle Waterson's been there and done that over with Invicta at atomweight, but also here in the UFC at strawweight. And then for Maryna, her last time out, a big-time win against Mackenzie Dern. And she faced adversity at the start of that fight, too. So when we look at this one, for Yan Xiaonan, again, a lot of surprise, I guess, from me, the fact that she was such a big underdog to start the week. And I say such a big underdog, but it was, to me, almost like a y'all must have forgot because her performances
Could she beat 2 washed-up contenders?
Decent level competition on the way up, at least the last 2. Gedalia, Angela Hill, 2 recognizable names. Again, a former title challenger, and one of them it was
Claudia?
just interesting to see that for Yan Xiaonan, losing that fight to Carla Esparza really dropped her stock. So, plus, she's been out for a long time, investing in her camp once more at Team Alpha Male coming into this one. I think it's going to be a fun fight. I definitely have Marina Rodriguez in this one, but I think Yan Xiaonan is one of the tougher tests that she will have faced on the way up.
I just look at this fight as being very similar to when Calvin Gastelum went on his sort of middleweight legends killing spree. If he had lost to Michael Bisping like midway through that, we probably would think about him in a much more negative tone than we do. That's kind of what Yan Xiaonan did. She was beating a lot of the sort of legacy fighters at this weight class. She beat Angela Hill, she beat Claudia, she beat Carolina, and then she lost to Carla Esparza, another one of those legacy fighters, and she wasn't able to get over that hump. To me, I don't really see the disrespect for her, if I'm being honest, because Maryna has been surging. She has never looked better throughout her career, and she's coming up against someone who lost her last fight, where she was a massive favorite going into that. So I understand why a lot of people are down on Yan, and it does really feel like if Maryna is able to win this matchup, it will be a title shot next for her. And my mindset going into any Marina Rodriguez fight is, if you don't grapple a lot, you're probably going to have a really, really, really tough night out there. And even Mackenzie Dern, who is a grappler, but a very different kind, not really a wrestler, more of a jiu-jitsu ace, had a really tough time with Rodriguez, and when she was able to get her down to the mat, Rodriguez has gotten a lot more intelligent with her defense off of the mat. I just worry about her with her ability to get back up to her feet, and that's why in 5-round fights I'm always going to kind of worry about her, just because let's say she gets held down for 2 rounds. Well, that's a lot of weight or a lot of distance she has to make back up in the other 3, so it will be interesting to see if she ever does fight like Rose Namajunas for the title. But in this matchup, I do like Marina Rodriguez quite a bit just because of her overall activity and her unique combination of power at this weight class too.
Yan Xiaonan, not as big of a favorite as you would think in her last fight. She's only a -135 over Carla Esparza, but before that, -190 against Gadelia, -270 against Kovacevic, -225 against Angela Hill, -400 against Siri Kondo. We look at the votes for this fight. 85% of the fans at Fight Night Picks on Instagram going with Marina Rodriguez. I think it's going to be a good fight, but again, for Rodriguez, a little bit more dynamic with the striking. Again, Yan Xiaonan employs a lot of movement, not necessarily all of that, pertinent to a fight like this. She just moves a lot. It's not like it accomplishes a ton. She just does move a lot. So I'm looking forward to this fight. I like the straight shots of Marina Rodriguez in this one. I'm going with her. Matt, 625 tuning in right now.
Hello, everyone.
157 likes. I know we can get that one up there quite a bit more, and hopefully you can tune into the Fight Night Picks fight sidekick for our main card. We couldn't be looking forward to a fight more than Sergey Spivak and Greg Hardy to start this card off. But I do know a fight that we are looking forward to. Before that one, we have Jamie Mullarkey taking on the man himself, Jalen Turner. At the start of the week, we were split on this pick. You look at this, these guys match up incredibly well because you look at the way that they fight. Jamie Mullarkey, you talk about movement. Matt Simone hitting us up in the super chat.
Thank you, Matt.
It is appreciated. But Jamie Mullarkey moves a lot, but moves his head incredibly well. He throws great shots down the middle, but when he needs to employ his hooks, they are there as well. Good leg kick, and when he needs to reach into the back of that Australian pocket, he doesn't have Vegemite. He has wrestling. So I love to see that out of Jamie Mullarkey. For Jalen Turner, he is a guy that's coming out of that southpaw stance. Lots of pop on the end of his shot. He is huge for lightweight. I'm sure, late career stages, hopefully it doesn't go like a guy that used to be huge and went on a big win streak at one point at lightweight like James Vick. But for Jalen Turner, I think there is a bright future. I could say that thing about both of these guys, really. But I love this fight. For King, he's got Mullarkey big time. Laos Nan saying this fight is beautiful. Brandon Sanders saying let's go. Peter Shea with Mullarkey. And KH, there's a lot of letters saying sub just now. We definitely appreciate that one. But Matt, I really do think this is going to be a lot of fun. And I'm glad that this is a featured prelim, because sometimes we get fights like, remember when Cesar Ferreira fought Carl Robertson, and that was a pay-per-view. That was a pay-per-view prelim headliner. This fight, this is one that I can get up for.
This is a really fun fight, and it's great matchmaking to be outside of the rankings, because I do think stylistically these guys match up very well with each other, and it's sort of one of those classic, one guy needs to keep it at range to land his strikes, and the other guy needs to get on the inside to be able to land his volume, and that'd be Mullarkey. The thing about Jamie Mullarkey, though, is that he does have great volume to go along with his power, but again, it all comes down to his footwork and his overall foot placement.
Dan hitting us up in the super chat saying, Jacoby parlay, let's go. Matt is saying, please wish my cat a happy birthday. Hans.
Happy birthday, Hans.
He's 20. That's an old cat.
We have a cat that's 19.
The cat came back the very next day,
Scarfield,
and
not
Todd's
original.
saying, yeah, that's an old cat. But everybody in the chat, you let Hans know, happy birthday.
We're looking out for him.
I'll have a swig of water after I'm done for Hans. But when it comes to this one, Matt, you set it up really well. I mean, Jalen Turner, he's an odd jack of all trades.
And I've been going back and forth. Like, okay, full transparency. Picked Jamie Mullarkey at the start of the week. Told Craig before we started filming I might switch my pick on this. And now I don't really know. Because I do think there's a world where Mullarkey gets on the inside, goes to the body, goes to the head. I don't know why you're shaking your head.
Pain.
And then tries to wrestle a lot throughout this matchup too. But if Jalen Turner can catch him on the way in, he does have really big pop, like you said, for this weight class. And he's massive. Like, he had a quote this week where he was like, I weigh like 185, 190 when I get in there in the cage. That's a ridiculous amount of weight to cut for a lightweight to cut. Like, Greg Hardy cuts 30 pounds to make heavyweight, and
Barely.
that's wild. Exactly, to barely make it. But Jalen Turner has a similar weight cut, and he weighs 100 pounds less, to put into perspective. I'm going to stick with the Jamie Mullarkey pick just because it feels like every time I do switch my pick, then I am wrong. But I think this is a great fight.
We look at the votes at Fight Night Picks on Instagram and the story. 57% of the fans going with Turner to 47% going with Jamie Mullarkey. If we have a look at the odds for fun, Jalen Turner is a favorite. I don't know why I went Southern for a second. Minus 150 at the start, up to a minus 127 or thereabouts. Drop down to minus 152 as it sits right now for Jamie Mullarkey. Open plus 130. He's around a plus 127. And Matt Simone is getting things done.
Matt Simone's had a good year.
Baby is due July 30th.
Congrats.
Wow. And Kristaps saying forward to Hans. Kristaps, I don't have that connection to Simone, so it's going to be a little difficult there for Matt. But yeah, congrats. Making moves and starting grooves is Matt Simone over in the Super
Big
Chat. Popo is saying that water looks good, making me thirsty. Yeah, you know what? You got to be drinking water. It's great stuff.
It's
it
a
really
weird
is.
bit.
It's not a weird pick. All right, Matt.
I said bit, not pick.
Oh, it's a weird bit? I don't know, maybe. But when we move on to that main card, this is where we're going to take over with the sidekick. It's here, it's on the channel. Everybody that's subbed, they should get that bell notification. If they don't, they should. But when it comes to this fight, I mean, for Sergey Spivak, he has one path to victory. If he outstrikes Greg Hardy on the feet, count me as surprised.
Oh my goodness.
And for Greg Hardy, I don't necessarily see him shooting for a takedown against Sergey Spivak. Sergey has been training since a wee lad at the wrestling, at the grappling. He has a win over a guy that it seems like every heavyweight has beaten the world over, Tony Lopez. And for Sergey Spivak, that was a win to get into the UFC. Now, he ended up losing to Walt Harris in his debut, but he's had some impressive performances. He has a win over a top 5 ranked heavyweight currently tied to Ivasa, where he looked very, very good. Now he's taking on Greg Hardy. That has to cut to make 266. He did it. He was the last guy on the scale. He did it. So for Greg Hardy, interesting nonetheless. But the guy definitely has finishing abilities. He has finishing powers. The weird thing about Greg Hardy, and I'm going to talk about this coming up on next weekend's card. I know I am because I got the notes in front of me as well. But Greg Hardy's one of those guys like Tafon Chukwe, where it's like finish. And then if you look at Greg Hardy's last number of fights, lost by decision to Alexander Volkov. Before that, the no contest Ben Sassoli, that went the full way. Yorgan De Castro by decision. He finishes Maurice Green. Then he loses to Tabor by finish. He loses to Taito Ivasa by finish, which in Chukwe, it was 3 finishes as an amateur, then 4 as a pro, and then it's been decisions ever since. It's just a weird pattern to see.
I had a hot take a long time ago and people got really mad at it, but a lot of people are starting to turn around on this thought, and it was that Valentina Shevchenko can sometimes be boring. You know, like, when she wins, it's normally by this brutally violent finish, but let's be honest, like, every 2 or 3 fights, it's this very technical kind of point fighting style, and it's not the most aesthetically pleasing to watch. I think that would be the best way I could put it into words. Greg Hardy is kind of a boring heavyweight, if we're all being honest. Like, he has really big power, but he hasn't found the Goldilocks zone of his skills to where he's like, okay, I can be aggressive in certain moments, or I can be defensively sound in certain moments. I always go back to, like, Yoel Romero. Yoel Romero was very clear. He had his offensive moments and his defensive moments. He would have his burst of offense, and then he would just sort of wait in the pocket, deflect shots, and let his batteries recharge. If Greg Hardy could ever adopt that kind of a style, especially trading at American Top Team, you would think he'd be able to, you know, kind of borrow from Yoel, if you will. I really do think it would help him a lot, and it would allow him to sort of recharge in between those big bursts. Because if you go back and look at the Yorgan De Castro fight, listen, Yorgan's not some world beater by any means. Jorgen, who was much smaller than Greg Hardy, was a lot faster than him early on. And let's be honest, he probably would have won that fight if he didn't break his foot in, what was it, the second or third round. He showed off that a smaller guy with good footwork can beat the bigger guy who has big power if he can use his footwork effectively. Now, that's not how Sergey is going to win this fight, but what it does demonstrate is if you're smart fight IQ-wise, you can beat somebody like Greg Hardy because you make it more about just the X's and O's, and that's what Sergey Spivak is probably going to do in this fight. He's not a better striker than Tai Tuivasa, like you said. Tai Tuivasa, top 5 in the world, like great striker, but Spivak was able to get the fight to where he needed to get it to really be able to showcase his strengths, and I think this fight's going to look very similar to the Tuivasa fight.
Now I'm following along in the comments section. Serial Chiller saying Spivak got knocked out by Aspinall last fight, and that's true. Spivak took that fight on short notice, and he looked completely lost. Okay. He looked completely underwater.
I just want to make sure on the screen. Greg Hardy, Tom Aspinall.
Well, that's true. It is true. And for Tom Aspinall, he comes in there super confident, head way up there, hands right here, and he just walks Spivak down. Spivak didn't throw anything, and then
like
he continues to get cracked. He goes for a lazy double, and on that, Tom Aspinall elbows him, and that's it. But I look at that, like Spivak, when he's confident, like when he fought Alexei Oleinik, and I know that's easy because Oleinek's old.
He's 55.
He still has that one X factor of they're going to lift my legs up between the rounds so I can get the blood back into my brain and near my heart. But when I look at it, like Sergey Spivak, when he's confident, he's great. When he's fighting Tuivasa, when he's fighting Oleinik, so on and so forth. When somebody offers him a little bit too much resistance, it gets difficult. So again, in that fight against Aspinall, I'm sure he was ready for the striking. He knows in the back of his mind, okay, this guy's a good grappler. I'm a great grappler. Or at least that's my A game, if you want to call it an A game. Sergey Spivak is like, if there's one A of his game, it's Marcin Tybura. Now, Tybura was able to get the win over Greg Hardy, and he was able to get the win over Sergey Spivak. So there is that. For Tuivasa, he was able to beat Hardy, but he wasn't able to beat Sergey Spivak. MMA math doesn't equate into this one, but for Spivak, he's got to work the takedown. He's got to work the grappling if he's going to win. I think he will, but it's not the most confident pick on the card.
I just want to mention this really quick. If Greg Hardy does win, it's going to be a very, very obvious path to victory because he's won this way twice. If Spivak goes for a lazy takedown early in the fight, locks on to one of his legs, and Greg Hardy is able to sprawl on him, it's going to look exactly like the Juan Adams fight. He does have good ground and pound from that position. He's a huge guy for the weight class, and let's say he is able to get Spivak underneath him, sort of pressed against the mat. I do think he will be able to land some damaging strikes, and that will sort of play into maybe Spivak has to be... he has to be smarter than just shoot volume takedowns the whole time, put it that way. So I do think that is one area where Greg Hardy can have success, but other than that, I do like Spivak in this match.
And I mean, listen, you might disagree with the pick, and that's fine, that's fair, that's how the show goes, and we'll look at Fight Night picks for the votes, and then we'll switch it on over to our next fight. 57% of the fans going with Spivak to 43% going with Greg Hardy. Giancarlo Schmidt saying, is the weight cut a concern? I mean, listen, Derek Lewis cuts to 265. Like, there are other fighters that do it. It's not necessarily the biggest concern.
Most guys don't come out and flex that they weigh 300 pounds, though, when they're professional athletes that are required to weigh under 265. That's all.
Odd flex. But, yeah, we move into our next fight. We have Kevin Holland taking on Alex Oliveira. I've got Kevin Holland. It's a little rich at a minus 400 as the second leg of the question mark kicks parlay. In this one, I think it's going to be a very interesting fight. It would personally surprise me if Alex Oliveira is able to get the win because I look at him, darts in and out, really long strikes, not the biggest pop at the end of his shots. I'm eager to see, again, rehydrated Kevin Holland, what he looks like tonight. But for me, Oliveira will threaten with the takedowns. I think Holland in this one, I think he's going to beat.
MPTV, this one's for you. What I see in Alex Oliveira is very much 10-day contract or 1-year minimum version of DeMarcus Cousins, where every now and then he might have a good performance and it might make you think, okay, he can still be that sort of prime version of himself. But let's call a spade a spade. We all know what Alex Oliveira is at this stage of his career, and we all know what Boogie Cousins is at this stage of his career. Yes, they can be flashy every now and then, but it's not a sustainability to their success, and that's the problem with Oliveira. I think he can look good for flashes throughout this fight, but the second Kevin Holland lands a big strike, and I do expect him to land a big strike in this matchup, I don't think Oliveira can recover fast enough if he does eat a big strike, because the thing about Oliveira is that I don't think he has a bad chin per se. He just doesn't recover well after he does get rocked. There's not really a great, I don't even know, like second wind to him, if you will. It's just sort of been, and I hate using this term, it's almost been beat out of him because he's had so many hard fights. He's been in there so many times, been in so many crazy fights that he just isn't the durable fighter that he once was, and I think he's going to struggle a lot against Kevin Holland.
Matt, 740 people tuning in right now, 209 total likes. Toss a like, listen, toss a sub, and we'll get moving because, listen, we got a big-time Fight Night Picks fight sidekick coming up for the main card. We'll be covering this fight as it happens, and you can tune in, hang out with us. We'll answer your questions as we try to do here as well. And listen, Shelby's saying if Kevin Holland would pressure guys, and listen, he had a wild 2020. His 2021, he lost to a couple of top contenders, and then he had the no contest against Dawkins, which was very, very odd.
I've been saying that about Jairzinho Rosenstrike for years. If he'd only pressure guys.
And he's got a weird fight of his own coming up at heavyweight. But yeah, both of us going with Kevin Holland in this one. Jean Carlos, that's very nice of you to say over there in that comment section as the likes pour in.
And here's my hot take. Kevin Holland wins. Give him Shavkat Rakhmonov.
That's a bad fight. Wayne hitting us up in the super chat saying Holland at 170 is scary. We definitely appreciate that. And for Matt Simone, who hit up the super chat again, can I repeat the first and second? I've got fight to start round 2 between Rodriguez and Yan Xiaonan, and I've got Kevin Holland. Edson Barbo, and it's for a bag of popcorn.
Is there another leg of it though?
There is.
Okay,
there's a third leg.
Should say that.
I'm keeping it very, very light this week. Edson Barboza taking on Bryce Mitchell.
Clay likes the idea, Craig.
I'll be honest. I look at this one, and Bryce Mitchell, obviously superb grappler, but he doesn't fight very often. Had the interview with Ariel Helwani, but then they really gave him a big spotlight with the embedded, where he's catching chub out of a farm pond and then saying, yeah, that's a keeper. I'm going to eat that.
They gave him the shorts.
You don't eat chub, man. Like, you just, they have sucker mouths. They're bottom feeders, especially at a farm and a pond.
You eat lobster, Craig. Those are bottom feeders.
Yeah, but it's in the ocean. It's not in the freshwater.
I'm just pointing out.
With agriculture runoff. But still, when I look at this fight,
the ocean has that.
For Bryce Mitchell, he really does have that together. Obviously, we point to the fight against Charles Rosa as being a fight where you didn't need to get the submission to get a 30-25, 30-24. With Edson Barboza, like, I have a couple posters in this room. Unfortunately, he and Terry Edom, or at least Terry isn't on him, but he definitely has the knockout ability. He's got a career of having good takedown defense at 145. Makwan was able to take him down 3 of 6 times, which is a little bit concerning. I don't know. Again, Bryce Mitchell, tinfoil hat. What's up with the bicep bruise? Like, did he tear his bicep or did he get cupping? I don't know, so I can't comment on that one. Brandon's saying Mitchell has a torn bicep. Billy Slaps is saying the same thing. I don't know about it, so I'm not necessarily going to speculate on it because I don't know. But when it comes to this fight, Matt, it's obviously striking versus grappling. It's obviously a clash of styles. So what are you saying here?
And it's young versus old, too. Like,
Yeah.
This could be a changing of the guard in this weight class. And I know that's a weird thing to say because Edson Barboza, at least to me, still doesn't feel like a featherweight. Like, when I think of Edson, I still think of him being in the mix at lightweight. And I have a bit of a hot take where it's, if Covington wins tonight, it's, hey, he might call out Dustin Poirier, and Poirier might move up to 170. Weird fight, but could be one of those weird money fights. I think if Edson wins this fight, he could move back up to lightweight and take weird one-off fights, because he's not necessarily a big enough name to where he can fight someone like Conor, and that would sell a ton of pay-per-views. But I think Edson could fight Tony Ferguson again. I think, let's say Cowboy beats Joe Lozon, and he still wants another one. Like, I do think there's some fun matchups out there for Edson to go out there and chase. That could be, maybe not Legends League matchups, but you get the idea. Just fun fights that fight fans would really appreciate at the end stretch of his career, because no matter what stage of Edson Barboza we're getting, it's going to be a fun fight. Like, he's going to win by knockout, lose by knockout, or we're going to get a wild back and forth fight, and the judges will be the one who decide who wins, and we'll all be better because of it. I am picking Bryce Mitchell in this fight. Does the bicep potential injury worry me? Yes, it does. But let's just assume both guys are 100% going into this matchup. I think Edson's going to really struggle with the overall pressure from Bryce Mitchell. And it's odd because with pressure, it's going to open you up to being knocked out. Look back at the Beneil Dariush fight. Dariush, a lot of pressure, goes down one time, eats a flying knee for his troubles, and the fight's over. And I think Beneil Dariush is a hell of a much better striker than Bryce Mitchell is, but I do think Mitchell, at this stage of his career, he's got phenomenal cardio, we all know that, and his grappling is just so fundamentally sound, but also unorthodox, that I do think Edson's going to struggle with it. Could he land a big knockout blow? Of course he could. It's Edson Barboza. He's one of the best strikers ever, but I do think Bryce Mitchell, this is kind of his time time, and I do expect him to be in the top 15 for a long time.
Blues fan 1700, I feel like Mitchell is 2 fights away from a title shot, counting this one. Also, if Covington win, does he get Usman again? I think he gets that fight against Dustin Poirier, because Covington's in a weird spot. I think he needs a few more wins before he gets another shot at Usman. I don't think, people are clamoring for a third fight between them, so I think it's probably a Poirier fight. But when I look at this division to answer the question, I mean, it's a good division.
It's a great division.
But you look at it, I mean, you're 10 and 11 here right now. So for Mitchell to beat Barboza, then ahead of him is Ige, Chikadze, who doesn't have a fight, Arnold Allen, Josh Emmett. Yeah, you might not be wrong.
Dan Hooker's back in the mix, too.
Yeah, it really is a tricky one. Star Smith, do you think that Bryce should come out to his own rap music? I think he's got, like, a music video coming out soon.
I did see that Reebok gave him the shorts, which I do like. That's Venom, sorry, thank you. I don't get that. Like, if you do have athletes who want to personalize their own stuff, you would think the company would want them to do that. It's kind of like how baseball, they don't really market their athletes. It's a really big problem. You would think in MMA, a sport that kind of relies them on individually marketing their athletes, would want a more personalized touch for a lot of guys walk out. It is nice to see Venom, though, give Bryce Mitchell the camo shorts. I think it looks neat.
Status saying, LOL, you guys got Bryce Mitchell. I haven't given my pick, and every time I've switched my pick, except for about 1 this year, and there's only been about 4 I've been wrong, I'm switching my pick to Edson Barboza. So again,
I don't blame you.
It's a disclaimer out there, but with Bryce Mitchell, the layoff, again, it didn't necessarily scare me at the start of the week. The more I think about it, and the more I think about Edson Barboza, the striking, the takedown defense, if he can get out of the way, he should have a good enough night out there. Now, that's easier said than done. Bryce Mitchell, just over 10 minutes control time against Andre Fili, who once he can control distance, he's an interesting fighter to watch, obviously with the win over Charles Jourdain. He's a bit of a triple threat, I would say. Like, he can grapple, he can submit, he can wrestle. Andre Fili, he's got all those parts to his game, or at least he can threaten with some of them. But I do like Edson Barboza in this one with the movement, with the power, and I think he's going to have a good night out against Bryce Mitchell. So me, I'm switching the pick on this one, but I love the fight, and I'm excited to cover it later on tonight.
It should be a really fun fight.
Should be a fun one, Matt. And Daryl's saying thoughts on Tagir. I don't like him. I just do not like him. I'd stay away from that one. Rafael dos Anjos taking on Renato Moicano at 160 pounds. I always love it when there's a catch weight on really short notice and both guys hit the catch weight, like 160. They both made 160. For Renato Moicano, the crazy flight to get back from Brazil to Vegas. He's able to get the fight. Replacing Fiziev, so a big-time fight nonetheless. And listen, I loved the way that Moicano looked against Alexander Hernandez, except for the last minute and a half of the first round, where he just kind of stopped, and he got hit, and he got backed up, and he didn't try for any of those lead uppercuts. He didn't try for any of his submissions. He didn't try for any takedowns. He had a lot of great opportunities when he was in that fight, and then he capitalized on it in the second round. He rocks Hernandez. Hernandez gets backed up behind the black line, shoots for a lazy takedown. He gets submitted. So in this fight, for me, Matt, I do have Dos Anjos, who is getting ready for a fight against Fiziev, a great striker. And with Dos Anjos, it does scare me. He's later on in his career, so on and so forth. I think he's got a good game plan, especially against a guy like Fiziev. I got him as the last leg of the QMK parlay, so I want to make sure that I get this one right. And I give you the right numbers. So I have, where are we to the 1? I have Holland, I have RDA, I have Rodriguez to a plus 124. Going with those 3.
I think this is a really, really fun fight, but it's a tough one for Moicano, especially on short notice. And again, it is kind of similar to the Bobby Green opportunity of last weekend, where, hey, you get this really big chance, we're all really excited for you, but by the way, it's on short notice, and you're facing a stylistic nightmare, for being honest, because Moicano's a good grappler. He has really good hands, good hand speed, and I'd say short of great power, but I think he has demonstrated really, really quality hand speed and power with his punches, especially at lightweight. But the issue is that his output isn't necessarily where you would like it to be for him to really crack in and get into the top 15. It's like, if Giannis could shoot 3-pointers, he'd be the greatest player ever, and it wouldn't even be close. If Moicano had the output of Max Holloway, he'd be one of the greatest fighters ever, and it wouldn't even be close. And I understand that is a huge X factor to give a guy, but if Moicano did have the work rate and the cardio to match his great jiu-jitsu, to match his really good offensive output, I do think that he would at least be able to make this fight more competitive. But the way I look at this matchup is that he doesn't have much of an answer to the body kicks and the leg kicks of RDA, and if he can't answer for those with either offensive takedowns, or a jab, I do think he's going to pay for it. And it goes back to a lot of other fights on this card. Moicano might have moments of success here or there, but it's how to have 25 minutes of success in a fight against a guy who's fought in plenty of title fights and in plenty of main events. It's a really, really tough ask. And Cuppy, I do agree, Kevin Durant is better than Giannis, but I do have Rafael dos Anjos. And I guess my big question for you is, how much do you think those 2 extra rounds, kind of similar to the Jamal Hill-Johnny Walker fight, will play into this? Or do you think we'll even get there to begin with?
We talked about it, going back to the start of the week. Like, since 2017, RDA's only had 2 fights that were 3-rounders. Like, one of them was against Chiesa, and the other one was against, I'm trying to think, Neil Magny, going back there, ends up getting the finish in that fight as well. But you look at it, Felder's a 5-rounder. Leon Edwards was a big-time fight. That was a 5-rounder. Kevin Lee, Usman, Covington, Lawler, Magny. That was the 3-rounder. And again, Tarek Saffiedine, that was a 3-rounder in 2017 as well. So there's been 3. But I really do. I mean, for Moicano to come in on that short a notice, obviously he does look thick at 160. He's a guy that 145, maybe it was the home, but again, like at 155, he's such an interesting guy, and he's only lost to like that nth tier of striker in his UFC career.
Do you think we could see Moicano settle into this weight class even more? Like, do you think there is a chance that the more we see him fight at lightweight, he might fill out a little bit more? He might get better cardio, and he could actually get into the top 15? Because the more we're talking about it, the more I actually think Moicano could have a super bright future at this weight class.
Oh yeah, I do. I seriously do. I mean, you look at it at 155 right now, you have a look at the rankings, you go all the way to the bottom. We talked about it earlier, but again, CDF, I don't think he's going to be in the rankings.
The Riddell fight would be great if him and Moicano ever did fight.
Brad Riddell, so on and so forth, and I maybe even scoffed at me about at least that CDF fight. I'd love to see it, win streak, not, whatever. But when it comes to this one, I do like Dos Anjos. So again, it is the fight goes to the second round between Rodriguez and Yan Xiaonan. I've got Kevin Holland and I've got RDA as a QMK parlay. Matt, we move on to the main event of the evening. Almost 800 tuned in. We got to get past 300 likes. We got to get up around 400. I know we can. And when it comes to this fight, Matt, I mean, for Covington, for Masvidal, they're best buds. And then Masvidal's going out there with breakers and he's burning a 10 out of 10 Covington card. Why would you even put it in a one-touch? Just keep it out. Like, you already ruined the card. You don't need to spend, the $4 on the one-touch. They're nice. But when it comes to this fight, I look at it, I mean, Masvidal, we sung his praises at the start of the week. We really did. If you don't believe it, go back. But we did. And when it comes to Masvidal, he can work the body. He can throw in combination where he has subtle stance switches even in the combinations with his kicks, with his punches. He is such a fun guy to watch when he's flowing, when he's not getting pressured by a wrestler.
Oh, yeah.
You're taking on Covington, pressure wrestler.
And that's what people aren't talking enough about. Like, the cardio aspect of Colby Covington. Everybody's talking about, if this fight's in the feet, Jorge has a really great chance. Yes, he does. But even go back to the Robbie Lawler fight. And I don't think Robbie Lawler at that stage of his career was as competitive as Jorge is. Because Robbie's weird. He's not really in the title picture anymore. He really has to be motivated to get the best version out of him. Look at the Nick Diaz fight. But you have to remember what happened later on in that fight. Yes, Lawler looked better in the 5th round, but even on the feet, when Lawler did start to get tired, Colby looked all right. Just his output is enough to stifle guys' own attack. Let's go back to Aljamain Sterling versus Petr Yan. On the feet, Petr Yan is a much better striker than Aljamain Sterling. Like, you watch MMA, I watch MMA, we know these things. But when Aljo could have success was, if I throw enough punches, your hands are more focused on blocking my punches than they are punching me. And I do think that there is that aspect with Colby Covington and his game. It's not that anything he does on the feet is eye-catching or really blowing your brain away. It's just good enough to really overwhelm you, and I do think that's going to be a big key in this matchup. I don't think enough people are talking about Covington inside the distance, but I am going to say this. I think Masvidal, if Masvidal won, I wouldn't be surprised at all, even though he is an underdog, because he does have the great mindset of, if I'm getting taken down anyways, I might as well just go for it. And I wouldn't be surprised if Masvidal does do some dumb things in this fight. I know that's a weird thing to say, but if he did go for flying knees, if he did try to Grammy roll out of takedowns, you might as well go for it, because you know what Colby Covington's trying to do. He's trying to get this fight to the mat no matter what. So I do think Masvidal, he's going to get the best version out of himself, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But at the end of the day, Colby Covington's still trying to fight for a title. He's the closest person we've ever seen in the cage with Kamaru Usman skill-wise. And I do think he's going to be able to win this fight. But it should be an entertaining matchup, I think.
So if we look at it, 72% of the fans going with Covington in this one. And again, for Masvidal, He's got like the multimedia presentation, prestige worldwide at the press conference. They're jawing back and forth. He's got the, is it an infinity stone? Is it the elements tattoo?
It's just weird.
It's a weird spot. Like, go chest or go shoulder. Why would you go like in the crease between your
Shoulder?
armpit? It's a weird spot to get a tattoo. And listen, I'm nobody to critique tattoos. I don't know anything about them, but it's just odd. So I like this fight. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Obviously, you know, best buds and the Reddit AMAs and so on and so forth. But I do have Covington in this one. Again, yes, he's not at the bigger, flashier gym anymore. He's still a great fighter. Like, that's the whole point of it. And for Masvidal, 37, fun fights to be had. I just don't necessarily love it. And a good point by Meat Boy MMA. Like, Jamal Hill's thumbs up on his chest. That's an odd one.
And this has been my whole point all week. Like, Jorge Masvidal to me is a boxer just trying to get as many big paychecks as he can. And this isn't me being negative about him whatsoever, because anybody else would do the exact same thing. But if you're Jorge Masvidal, you've lost the champion twice. This is by far the biggest fight you can make. And win, lose, or draw, you can always fight like Nick or Nate Diaz afterwards, and it doesn't have to be a pay-per-view main event. You can put that on any single pay-per-view card, and it's going to help you sell that pay-per-view if you're the UFC. So for Masvidal, I just don't think he needs this win nearly as much as Colby Covington does, and I do think that plays a part at the end of it. Like, Colby is training every single day thinking, I'm getting back to Kamaru Usman and I'm going to fight for a UFC title. Whereas Jorge Masvidal's got like mezcal that he's selling, he's got his own promotion. Like, he has a lot of other things in the go now, and I don't think he is the all-in athlete that he once was.
We'll see what happens, but I mean, over there in the comments section, good point. AG saying Ricardo Lamas made a whole career at MMA Masters, and they've got Miguel Baeza, who's got a big fight against Andre Fialho. And who else do they have? Danny Chavez is over there. Like, there are some fighters, even in the UFC, that train out of that gym. It's just not the powerhouse that is ATT proper in Coconut Creek, Florida. So, as people know, with Fight Night Picks, we go back down to the bottom. We whip through the entire card. But in this one, yeah, both of us going with Colby Covington. So, Matt, we move back down, and we'll do this one quick. We have Dustin Jacoby and Hussar, Michał Oleksiejczuk. I've got Dustin Jacoby in this one.
I had Dustin Jacoby at the start of the week, but I'm switching it to Lord Michał Oleksiejczuk.
We have Devonte Smith taking on my guy, Ludwig Klein. I've got Devonte Smith in this fight.
I got Devonte Smith in this one, too. It should be a really fun fight, though.
Should be Tim Elliott, Tagir Ulanbekov. I have Ulanbekov with no confidence in this one. Again, Tim Elliott can mix it up in the scrambles. He throws a good leg kick. Tagir Ulanbekov's not a great striker. Good grappler. I'm eager to see this one play out, though.
Tim Elliott's like DeAndre Jordan with the Knicks. It's not as sad as it was with the Lakers, to where you're like, oh my goodness, get it off the court. But you are starting to get concerned about what the future is going to hold for Tim Elliott. Like, even if he does win this fight, I don't expect him to be this long-time gatekeeper to where he can turn away a lot of top prospects for years to come. Like,
he has been.
He has been, but that's what I mean. He's been doing it for so long that I do expect the time to run out shortly, and I do like Ulanbekov in this matchup.
All right, we move into our next fight. We have Kelleher taking on Nurmagomedov. I have Nurmagomedov in this one. Wayne with the old super chat. Yeah, the old Colby Masvidal characters. Like, I don't get caught up in that as much as maybe I used to. But it is an odd one, saying Colby takes it inside the distance.
I only care if fighters are exciting in the cage anymore. Like, that's all I care about. I don't care about what they say, what they do. Like, I just care about if they're entertaining to watch. And I do think Masvidal and Covington are entertaining to watch, and they're very, very good martial artists. That's why this fight's going to be so much fun.
Both of us going Nurmagomedov in this one. We'll move into our next one. Moroz, Agapova, split on the pick in this one. I've got Agapova.
I've got Moroz with not a lot of confidence, but I don't see either one as being a title threat anytime soon.
We have Negumereanu taking on Nzechukwu. To me, Nzechukwu feels like the parlay buster. I'm going with the man himself, Nicolae Negumereanu.
I also have Nicolae, but again, this is a very close fight.
Derek of Rivia saying, watch Elliott highlights, and he has no chance. Sometimes he gets hit. Like, he loses...
Highlights also don't tell the full story, though.
No. Maryna Rodriguez taking on Yan Xiaonan. I've got the fight goes to the second round. To win the fight, I've got Maryna Rodriguez in this one.
I think Maryna Rodriguez is the best striker in this division. There, I said it. I haven't said it yet, but I have. Joanna Jędrzejczyk's very good. Rose Namajunas, Wei Li. I think Marina's better than all of them. I really do. She just has this massive Achilles heel with her wrestling defense and with her ability to just get held down on her back. I think if she could just fix that one hole, and it's a big hole, don't get me wrong, she would be able to fight for the title, but I think she'll be able to win today. Just like you said, it'd be nice if she could A, fight on the pay-per-view portion of this card because she has got big opportunities in the past. That's all.
All right, we have Jalen Turner taking on Jamie Mullarkey, going with Jalen Turner myself.
This is a close fight, and I thought about switching the pick, but I do think Jamie Mullarkey's ability to get on the inside, and he has surprising power. I would say both guys have surprising power in this matchup, though. I just think this is going to be a great fight.
Be interesting to see who stops striking first, and not necessarily that it's a tell, because both guys are great at wrestling and grappling, but I'm just eager to see how that one plays out.
It's a good point, because both guys are well-rounded. They just choose to strike.
Sergey Spivak taking on Greg Hardy. Either Greg Hardy knocks him out, you would think, or Sergey Spivak's able to get it to the ground. I'm saying Sergey's able to get it to the ground. I'm going with Sergey Spivak.
Do you think Greg Hardy will fight him like Francis fought Cyril Gane? Just like a very
Comes out with knee
wrestling
wraps?
That'd be wild. No, I like Spivak in this matchup too. He's the more skilled martial artist. Again, I'm worried he could get knocked out early, but if it goes past the first round, I heavily favor Spivak.
I don't have a name saying Turner getting knocked out in the first round. Maybe. We have Kevin Holland taking on Alex Oliveira. I've got Kevin Holland as the second leg of the QMK parlay in this one.
I expect Kevin Holland to be in the top 15 of welterweight. I really do. I think he's one of the better fighters out there. I think he's going to be big for this weight class. I think he's going to have really good power. The Oliveira matchup's kind of a weird one to give him because, honestly, I do see this as being an easy fight if this is the best version of Kevin Holland at this weight class. But, yeah, I think Holland should be able to get it done.
So we got to have, like, the hottest of hot takes. Like, Jacare's never going to get submitted by Andrea Muniz. Then we got to have the mildest of mild tastes. It's like Tostitos mild salsa.
No. You told me Kevin Holland wasn't going to look better at welterweight than he did at middleweight. So that would suggest that he wouldn't be ranked at middle or at welterweight.
He was very high in the middleweight rankings. I think he can make the welterweight rankings. I just don't know how far he's going to go in the rankings. Li Jingliang's ranked.
That's not a wild take by me, though, to say that he's a welterweight ranked.
That's what I'm saying. And MPTV calling you out, but we move on to our next fight, Matt. I switched the pick. I went from Mitchell to Barboza, but again, grappler versus striker, just like the first fight that's on this main card. Spivak versus... Is Greg Hardy... What is Greg Hardy? If he's not a striker, I guess.
A high-level athlete?
He's cutting weight.
What team did he play for? I don't even know what NFL
The Panthers and the Cowboys.
Okay.
But when it comes to this one, I've got Barboza. I think the speed, the striking, it's still all there for him late in his career. I'm banking on it, I guess you could say. But, yeah, I'm going to go with Barboza.
I would say 100% Bryce Mitchell if I wasn't worried about the injury. And again, that's something that's in the back of my mind. But if both guys are 100%, I really do think this is Bryce Mitchell's time. I think this is more naturally his weight class, even though Barboza hasn't looked bad at 145 by any stretch. But I do worry about him as to what his cardio is going to look like late in a 3-round fight if he is grappling quite a bit. Because we've seen him strike for 15 minutes. He does look very good. I'm just curious to see what he'll look like when the grappling wrinkle is added in. But this fight's going to be all one way or the other. Like, either I'm going to look really dumb or you are, I think, because Bryce Mitchell's either going to get knocked out in, like, the most posterizing way possible, or he could twist or Edson Barboza, which would also be insane.
If you're on a fence and you get it wrong, I don't think you look that dumb. And listen, Atua May, there's no sponsor there anymore. We'd love to have another one if you know of somebody, or if you're in that position. Matt, Simone, hitting us up in the super chat again. I'm just drinking a lot of water. You got to do it for the brain. And when it comes to this fight, Matt, for Dos Anjos taking on Moicano, I've got Dos Anjos as the third leg of the QMK parlay. It's an interesting fight, and I gave Moicano all the flowers in the world at the start of the week. I think he's got a great opportunity in the division. I think he could become ranked at lightweight, which is saying something. It's a packed division. Dos Anjos was already training for a 5-round fight against Fiziev, who is a great striker. Obviously, the weird thing about Moicano, we didn't even talk about it yet. He uses his hands, which are so damn good, to set up his submissions. He's never knocked anybody out as a pro, which is insane. It's insane.
And he's not submitting Rafael Dos Anjos.
Because he rocks guys on the feet. I like the man himself here. I do like Dos Anjos. And Derek of Rivia, I don't know, man. I don't know anything about Bryce Mitchell's arm. And he hasn't talked about it this week, so I don't know anything about it.
I'm not a doctor.
I'll
let people know that right away. This should be a really fun fight. And for Moicano, like, he wouldn't have taken this fight if he didn't think he could win it. And he is coming off of a fight not that long ago. So you do expect a fairly good version of Moicano. And the other thing that I've been going back to is he didn't take a lot of damage in that fight against Hernandez either. Like, yes, I worry about him cardio-wise, but when it came down to did he take a lot of damage and am I worried about the carryover? Not at all. It's not like Hernandez was able to rock him or land anything all that substantial. I do agree. Like, he was able to land good shots there at the end of the first round. But again, nothing that worries me coming into this fight. With RDA, it all comes down to, is he better than his opponent at wrestling, or is he worse than his opponent at wrestling? And in this matchup, he is the far superior wrestler to Renato Moicano, because Moicano only has, and I don't even want to call it a weakness, it's just not a strength in his game. Like, he's a great striker, he has really good jiu-jitsu, he's just not someone who goes out there and gets a lot of takedowns throughout his fights, and that's why I do think he's going to struggle with the wrestling, and that's why I do like RDA quite a bit in this matchup.
All right, Matt, and we move into the main event. We're both in agreement, both of us going with MMA Master Zone. Colby Covington, a guy who went to decision against Kamaru Usman, and so did Jorge Masvidal, but one guy looked better in the decision, and one guy didn't, and one guy looked better when he got TKO'd than the other guy who got TKO'd.
Very true. Okay, so we both agree that if Covington wins, he's probably going to call out Poirier. That's a big fight. If Masvidal wins, does he call out Conor at 170?
I don't know.
I just don't really know.
The guy's putting out 3-second clips, smoking cigars on the beach today.
And I agree with you 100%. Like, we both have Covington, and it does feel like the conversation is, okay, after this, what does Covington do next? Like, oh, is he going to go right into a fight with Usman, or does he need a couple more wins? It just feels like we haven't talked a lot about what happens if Masvidal is able to get the win as the big underdog, because
more money fights.
But more money, exactly. And that's why I do think the McGregor fight might be what he calls for, just because McGregor does kind of walk around in the 170 region. It does look like that's the preferred weight class for this sort of money fight region. So I'm just throwing that out as maybe a possible future Masvidal opponent if he is able to get the win. But I agree, we both have Covington.
Yeah, we do. And it should be a great one. And coming up, we're going to start 15 minutes before that main card. You can check out the Fight Night Picks Fight Sidekick. You can hang out, enjoy the fights, talk fights with us as we have over in the comments section. So it should be a lot of fun. Derek of Rivy is having a good time over there in the comments section. Phoenix is hanging out. Laosnan, just my 2 cents. Everybody over there as well. The Star Smith 77 Porter saying Connor is done. He's definitely having a good time on the IGs and the Twitters of the world. And sometimes he tweets things that are nonsensical, and then he deletes them shortly thereafter. So I think it should be a lot of fun. I'm pounding the water today, and I am really looking forward to that sidekick. I can't throw it into the camera. It's not going to happen. But what I will say is it should be a good time. So hopefully you can join us there. Toss a like, toss a sub, and join us over there later on tonight. And coming up in the not-so-distant future, we'll have our video out for, I was going to say, it's Thiago Santos, and he's taking on Magomed Ankalaev, and it's a really interesting Fight Night card coming up.
I was just going to say, I know we're both really excited for this Fight Night card coming up. I would say it's probably the best Fight Night card of the year. No,
so far.
I was going to say, not a crazy hot take because we haven't gotten the deepest up cards, but I really do think that this sort of string of cards, they've been getting better as we've gone into them. This is a great pay-per-view tonight. Hopefully you guys hang out with us on that Fight Sidekick, and yeah, we'll get ready to pump out those videos for next week. I can't wait.
It should be a lot of fun. Thanks everybody who has joined in for the old question mark kicks. We'll see you later on tonight. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say.
Let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen.